Greetings, everybody. It's Jim. I'm asking you ahead of time here today to please like and even more importantly, subscribe if you've been watching this channel for any length of time. Not only so you can get the latest videos and just have them pop up more often, but so everybody else can too, because that's how the YouTube algorithm works. It's looking for your input, so please like and subscribe. A few months ago, I made one of my most popular videos, why everyone should be using GURPS. And the idea, and it really got a lot of, there's a lot of passionate people about GURPS. There's so many comments on it. But the thing is, it was such a great tool that you didn't even need to play GURPS to be able to use GURPS. Well, today, true believers, we've got another video out today that I'm going to be going over you with another great tool that is also a classic, and it even says so in the rules, in the cover, a character and combat system adaptable to any fantasy role-playing system. So even then, they know that people won't necessarily play the game as much as they will use what's inside. And what's inside are the most beautiful critical hit charts you will ever see in all mankind. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about why everyone should be using Rolemaster Unified Core Law. HarnQuest has just started on Kickstarter right now, and what it does is it provides you with the latest in Harnworld supplements for the fantasy medieval role-playing setting that can be used with any system. It also gives you 50% off all PDF purchases while you are a HarnQuest subscriber. It's worth it just for the additional material alone, but getting that 50% off bonus, man, if you've decided that you like Harn World at all, this is a savings that you can't ignore. So Rolemaster was created by the cool cats down at Iron Crown Enterprises. If you are a younger player, after you get this, you're going to want to see them at Gen Con. They're just the coolest guys in the world. And if you want to talk about legacy, they're also the guys that produced the Middle-earth card game in the 90s, which was beautiful. And then, of course, the Middle-earth role-playing game as well in the 90s. But also, they came up with my favorite spaceship combat game of all time, Silent Death. So anyway, let's get more into the system. All right, so I'm going to take the biggest ideas first and then tether down. But first, I got to take a minute or two, not too long, just to explain the basics of the system and the basic skill check system so you can understand how everything else works. So every character's got 10 statistics to it, 10 attributes, if you will. Agility, constitution, empathy, intuition, memory, presence, quickness, reasoning, self-discipline, and strength. All pretty self-explanatory, and it's a wide breadth of attributes that don't really overlap with each other, so it's pretty good. Now, your skills are based on these statistics, these attributes. Now, sometimes when you're doing a skill check, you'll just roll against your stat. Simple enough. But the skills, of course, are based off these stats. Sometimes it's just based off of one stat, but often they're based on 2 or even 3 stats divided by the number of attributes asked for, right? So you're going to get some wild numbers, and that really makes skills a little bit special. I kind of like it. And the reason this is also important is because Rolemaster works on a D100 system. Let's get into that. Rolemaster works on a D100 system, so every character on average will, if they're average, will have a statistic score of 48 to 53, with a max being 100. Now, the thing is, in Rolemaster, there's also kind of an exploding dice thing going on with their D100 rolls. If you roll a 96 or up to 100, the dice explode and you get to roll them again, giving you, and you get to do that up to 2 more times, giving you a result of up to potentially 300, which is going to be really important in the next section when I talk about the big thing that we're talking about. Of course, this can work in reverse too. If you roll a 1 to a 5, it actually, you have to roll again, but you subtract that from the 0-1 to 0-5, and then you just keep on potentially going down, right? Up to 3 times. So you can get a negative, 290. The way that works is like 297 or something like that. It doesn't matter. If you're even close to that on rolling, you've definitely fumbled. I don't know what the odds are of actually getting a 300. I don't know. But it's actually, it's quite interesting and very simple. And now let's go over to results. In most D100 systems, the idea is whatever your skill or attribute is that you're rolling against, you roll a D100, and as long as that number after modifiers is under your skill or attribute, it succeeds. Well, with the exploding dice, both upward and downward in Rolemaster, they go a little bit different direction. It's kind of cool. So a 1 or less is an absolute failure. That's their critical miss, and we already explained how the dice can get that way. But 1 to 75 is a failure. And that seems a little bit weird on a D100, right? Because it's like a failure on 1 to 75 when I only got a 25% chance to make it. Well, in this system, you add your skill level, and if you recall, the average skill is around 50. So you already got that 50-point head start. So it's not that bad. Then, of course, you roll for how hard it is. Is it a routine skill check? Is it a difficult skill check? And that can go up from like 1 to 50, whatever. Really variant, by the way, too. So if DMs want to have a lot to play with numbers here, like in the fantasy trip, it's tough because to give somebody a +1 because it's so important. While in other systems like Dungeons and Dragons, you have every point is like 0.5, so you can be a little bit more friendly. Well, Rolemaster, a D100 system absolutely allows you to be even friendlier and be even more fine-tuned to give little numbers away to people for coming up with whatever ideas they may come up with. Now, a 76 to 100 is a partial success, and a 101 to 175 is a definite success. All right. So remember, we're getting so much of a head start here with our skilled characters that, they're already closer to 75 as it is. So getting results of 101 to 175 isn't so bad. And of course, as we move up, you can see absolute success, where it's a critical hit, crazy great things can happen, okay? Now, the thing is, when we're looking at it here, it looks like this chart is just, your standard, here's the chart of what happens, right? But what they really do nice in Rolemaster, not that you need it as a game master after a while, but the thing is, every one of these skills has its own chart. Now, the rolls are still the same. It just, they fine tune what happens, just like the unusual event, especially the unusual event for every circumstance. So it's actually pretty good. Again, once you're you're a game master with some experience or you've already seen these, you get an idea of it, but it's nice to have that in there. Now below this, each one though has also, some of them have them, some of them don't, all these basic modifiers that can help you figure out things about how difficult working with, like in this case, it's the animal skill, how working with one type of animal, whether it's wild and untamed or domesticated, will have an effect. It's pretty nice that they have that. It doesn't happen in all of them, but it happens in most of them. So when now we're talking about specialized charts, let's get into the main reason I think every one of you should get this book. So here we have the most beautiful, if not intimidating looking thing in the game, and it's not hard to work at all. We're going to go through it simple. This is so adaptable to any role-playing system that has a damage and critical hits, okay? And that's most of them, right? With the exception of games like maybe Fate, which is more narrative-based. And that is exactly what this is, by the way. It is the damage and critical hit charts for the game. Now, as we see here, this says Battle Axe. These are the charts only for the battle axe. So if your character has a battle axe, they copy this, they put it in with their character folder or 3-ring binder or whatever they want to use, and you got it. So, and the thing is, there's one for not only every weapon type, but also things like an animal's beak, a bite, bola for some exotic weapons, and even magic like a bolt of fire for an example. Now the thing is, I got to move up here. Now the criticals are specialized, like criticals heat for a bolt of fire, go figure. Bola is grappling and crush. A bite is puncture and crush, not a surprise. Slash, puncture, and unbalancing for a beak. And of course, battle axe is slash and crush. So let's just go over this now. Now the thing is, it looks intimidating. Like I said, it's not. Most of the time you'll be on this chart right here, which is medium. They have charts for small and bigger opponents, and maybe some attacks are considered smaller or bigger, and they'll use these tables instead. But let's just go over it. So basically, here's your roll. And as we discussed, you need about a 75 to hit. When it comes to these attacks, anything over a 70 usually is a hit, okay? Now, The top portion of this is the armor rating of the target. 1 is unarmored, a 2 to a 4 is about leather armor or leather-esque armor in the case of animals and monsters and such, and a 10 is just plain plate armor, okay? And there are other modifiers which for shields and stuff, which I believe has to do with getting hit in the first place. I don't think it matters here. But anyway, you take your roll, and let's just say you get a moderate roll of like a 82. Okay, and you guys, your against is wearing leather armor, like a 3. So you're going to do 8 points of damage. Simple as that. Okay, and of course, as you move up, the armor makes it a little bit tougher to hit. But as you move up, you get more criticals this way. Now it looks like you get criticals pretty easy. To a degree, because it looks kind of low, like 100s, even 5s are getting critical hits. This is what these letters mean here, and I'll talk about that in a second. But when we see in the critical hit section, they are so detailed that they don't go crazy right away. They have plenty of room to do that later. So let's get in what this means. So 10 AK, let's say we did hit a guy with a 5 armor class and we rolled 104. So 10 points of damage, but AK, now the last letter means the critical type, which is crush. Now, can you imagine where we're going to go here? As we can see with the battle axes, every weapon's got a chart. Well, every critical also has a chart. Let's go to the crush critical hit. Now, I know I told you guys I was just going right to the charts, the critical hit charts, but on my way, I'm like, I got to just at least show you this along the way. So here's the first one, arming sword. Ball of cold, fire, battle axe, beak, bite, bolt of fire, ice, lightning, water, longbow, short bow, broadsword. There's so many. Claw, club, crossbow. We're only on the C's, folks. And here's crush, which is why the crush critical hit is with a K. Dagger, falchion, if that's how you say that. Fighting stick, flail, grapple, horn, mace, ram, rapier, rock, scimitar, shield, sling, spear, stingers, trample, unarmed strikes, unarmed sweeps, warhammer, whip. Just so much. Absolutely so much. So let's get into the critical hit tables now. All right, so here we have the critical tables, and as you can imagine, just like every weapon or attack had its own chart, so do the critical hit, each critical hits. So basically, here we will have one for acid, cold, electricity, grapple, heat, holy critical strikes, impact, and of course the one we were looking for, crush with a K. So as you recall, the attack was 10 AK. That was the result we got. 10 was the number of points. The last letter was to get to this crush table with a K, and then there was the A in the middle. That is simply what chart we're going to roll down, and then we roll another D100, and we get all these different results. So let's go through a few of these. And we would roll, let's say we only rolled like a 1, barely grazed the foe's ear, so we hit them for an extra 1 point. And then let's say if and by the way, it also tells you where you hit them, in the head or the arm or the abdomen, whatever. So let's take this arm one. The foe's arm is driven almost into his chest by force of blow, 5 extra points of hit. And then it has these 2 markers, which are conveniently down here. It's a lightning bolt and another lightning bolt, and we have it down here. So we have to roll for breakage of something, which could be the shield, something they're carrying, or whatever. And then this means they could be an extra injury penalty. Okay, so they can actually get like a nagging injury or something that's going to affect long term, I do believe. And it just goes on to the point where if you're rolling 100, it's a staggering blow to the head and has the foe reeling. Blood clots cause foe to have massive stroke and die at the end of 3 rounds. So they're obviously dead, and they got some other modifiers here, like they're bleeding out. Big fatigue, and it's just terrible. If you're rolling out these things and the thing is, these are written specifically for, crushing attacks, all these, and of course E is going to be even tougher as you go on. A through E's get really rough really quickly. So unlike the A's, which barely do anything, the E's are still something nice. Knock on foe's noggin demonstrates protective value of skull, 2 extra hits, and a fatigue of 10. Yes, a fatigue penalty of 10. And then when you get to the biggest one, downward strike to forehead shatters the skull, splashing contents in a 5-foot radius. Just automatic death. The beauty is how the DM can actually, the game master can actually take these and just, because there's so many of them, it's going to be really rare to just get the same one twice, right? So this adds so much more flavor to the combat. And actually, that's what we're also going to go over just a little bit here, is how flavorful the combat is in Rolemaster. Rolemaster definitely is a pen and paper combat system. It's not a board game whatsoever, unlike games like the Fantasy Trip or 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons, and even 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. I've seen the new one out, and they definitely have the old, I remember it from 3.5, they have the grid and everything like that. So there, but here, it's absolutely the players talking to the game master, talking about what they're going to do, and then it's just an interpretive dance of death, right? So that's what I gather from Rolemaster. Now, mind you, I'm not going to talk much about this because this is not part of a tool that you can actually bring to other games, but this is more of a section for why you should be playing Rolemaster if you want to give it a shot. This is a true interpretive dance of death, okay? It's pen and paper RPG at the max, okay? There's no tactical element to it like games like the Fantasy Trip or 3.0 Dungeons & Dragons on up, especially 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons, which I liked, by the way. I got to do a video of it yet. But the thing is, it's just the interpretive dance of death, and they do cover just about everything that can happen in a combat. When it comes to attacks, it's basically about maybe 20 pages of things that could happen. The basics are up front, but later they get into called shots. Subduing a foe seems to be a big one, but it does also seem to me like they are, for game masters, going to really have to be really familiar with this and recall a lot more than maybe other games. So as much as I think that might be a little bit of a challenge, I can see it as definitely being rewarding. So going back to the tools that Rolemaster has that everybody can use, it comes down to the character races. And this is no small thing. Like anything else Rolemaster does, it's not done in a small way. I mean, Dungeons & Dragons, biggest game in the world, finally, after decades of all the basic Tolkien races, came out with about 3 or 4 races. I know they came out with the Warforged and the Tieflings, and there's a few others, but basically just a few. Compared to this, not only does Rolemaster take the cake, it takes the ice cream, it takes the pudding, leaves all the dessert for nobody else. So let's go over some of these real quick. Now, the Avenarchs are basically hawk-like creatures that kind of look down upon the rest of societies, definitely humans. And now, as we go through these, it's kind of funny. All the basic Tolkien races that we're all familiar with are up in the higher part of the alphabet, and all the weird ones are and the new ones are on the bottom. So we're going to have to get through some basics. So the dwarves, elves, gnolls, gnomes, goblins, Gritar. Okay, Gritar, you could say they're the Slan, I believe, in Games Workshop's world of Warhammer. Dungeons & Dragons, I'm drawing a blank of what they're called. But they definitely have had them in there, but now these are a playable race. Half-elves, halflings, hobgoblins, humans, and now the Havastan is just another word for giants. Idivia. This is the start of some of the new ones. Now these are kind of cat-like creatures with the coffee-colored fur. They're a competitive society and place a premium on personal honor. Kind of reminds me of a little bit of Klingons there. Kobolds. Nycamerith. These are basically akin to gnomes and halflings, and they have a bluish hue to their skin, and they are great musicians for the most part. And of course, we got orcs, and now we have the Plainos, which is kind of the reverse of a centaur in a way, basically man's body, but the animal's head. And so they're pretty interesting. And then we have the sea crawls, which are almost like the abominable snowman, if you remember Rudolph and the Red-Nosed Reindeer. But basically, they're ape-like creatures with dark gray or blue skin. Let's see here. They raid and plunder a lot. They're kind of like baboon barbarians, I guess you could say, for lack of a better term. Then we have the Sibikai. Okay, I've seen, these are kind of jackal type creatures, and they're usually quiet and subdued, but yet they're quick to anger as well. And there's something often hire themselves as mercenaries. I guess they're pretty much a fighting a culture in their race. And then we have the, oh boy, have fun saying this with me, Solugir. Okay. Reptile men. Simple enough. Reptile men. Goodness gracious. Come on. Sitoyasilithi. If you're going to make words like this, you got to have a pronunciation guide. You got to do it for us, guys. Come on. Or at least me. So these are slim men. They look also like reptile men. A little bit different. They have reptilian skin. So the difference between those are the reptile men and these reptile men, I wonder if they have any kind of connection, kind of like the Romulans and the Vulcans in Star Trek. Now we have, of course, we got trolls in the Wolfen. Okay, Wolfen. I guess that makes sense. Wolves, obviously, and obviously probably pretty animalistic warrior race kind of thing going on there. And those are the races, and of course they have all the race tables here and stuff, talking about how tall they are, the averages and such. But the thing is, with there's a good amount of extra races that anybody can use. It reminds me of Fantasy Folk, which is another good source, by the way, from Steve Jackson Games, or if you're playing science fiction, Alien Races. Those are really good and detailed. Now, there's not a lot of detail, as you notice in these. These talk about the basics, but I think they might get into that in other books. All right, so we're going to have to give credit where credit is due. Rolemaster Unified has been out for a small clip, but I don't know about the previous editions if it had this in it, but it very well may be something that Dungeons & Dragons learn from and uses, and that is when you're making a character, you choose a culture, okay? So this makes it for more of a background for the character right off the bat, and it kind of limits their vocations to choose from a little bit, but it also gives them some bonuses because they learn by osmosis in certain skills that they may have, okay? Whether you're a mariner, you live in the highlands, you're a cosmopolitan from a big city, a nomad, rural, and as you can see on the chart on the right, I mean, depending on the culture you have, you get certain bonuses to certain skills, and that's pretty interesting. And I really wonder, I know Fate does that too. That's part of their character creation process. So what came first, the chicken or the egg? The question is, which one is the chicken that laid the egg of culture? Boy, that was a wild thing to say. But anyway, was it Rolemaster Unified that came out with first? Let me know in the comments below if you know. So Rolemaster Unified Core Law is definitely worth it for the races and the damage and critical hit charts alone. But you can easily jump into Core Law, I think, as a player. As a game master, you can too, but you really got to go on the basics because there's just a lot of meaty content in there, but you're going to have to do your due diligence and do your homework on the game. A fun project nonetheless, but you're just going to have to do it and use it often to become a role master, but I think you'll find it very worthy. Now, by the way, you see here, I'm holding up the Lords of Underearth and microgame number 18 from Metagaming, because, as everybody knows, I do role-playing and wargaming on this channel. The thing is, I'm going to be doing, because of the Harn World Kickstarter that I talked about earlier, that's going on, I'm going to be obviously doing a lot more role-playing this month. However, to wet the whistle of all the guys that are still wargamers, the Lords of Underearth should tickle your fancy for a little bit because it is a mix between a war game and a supplement for a role-playing game, that being the Fantasy Trip. And Fantasy Trip players, I'm telling you right now, get ready to cry because this thing is pretty cool and it's so hard to get. But I'll go over that tragedy in another video. Guys, you have a good one. Stay safe out there. Roll some dice and blow something up, and I'll see you next video.